The date is November 11th, 1940. The time is 9 p.m. The location is Taranto, Italy, a heavily fortified naval harbor on the heel of the Italian boot, where the pride of Mussolini's Regia Marina lies at anchor. 6 battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels rest in what their commanders believe is absolute safety. The night is moonlit.calm and deceptively quiet. In exactly 3 hours, 21 obsolete biplanes will change naval warfare forever. If you're fascinated by the untold stories of World War II that changed history, hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a like on this video and drop a comment telling us which secret weapon of World War II you want us to cover next. Your support keeps these stories alive. The harbor at Taranto is no ordinary anchorage. It is a fortress. Anti-aircraft guns bristle from every shore battery. Barrage balloons float like bloated sentinels above the warships. Their steel cables designed to shred any aircraft foolish enough to fly low. Torpedo nets hang beneath the waterline, protecting the battleship's vulnerable hulls. Searchlights stand ready to illuminate the sky at the first sign of trouble. The Italian Navy has transformed this natural harbor into what they believe is an impregnable sanctuary. Admiral Inigo Campione sleeps soundly tonight, confident that his fleet, the 4th largest in the world, is untouchable. He is catastrophically wrong. 300 miles to the southeast, aboard the British aircraft carrier HMS Illustrious, 21 young men are receiving their final briefings. They are the pilots and observers of the fleet ARAM, and most of them are in their early 20s. Some have fewer than 100 hours of flying time. Tonight, they will pilot ferry Swordfish torpedo bombers, fabric-covered biplanes that look like they belong in a museum rather than a modern war. The Swordfish has a maximum speed of 139 miles per hour. The Italian fighters that might intercept them can fly twice that fast. The Italian anti-aircraft guns will fill the sky with thousands of rounds of flak. The odds of survival are, at best, uncertain. Lieutenant Commander Kenneth Hutch Williamson commands the first wave. He is 28 years old. A career naval aviator with a reputation for ice-cold nerves and meticulous planning. As he climbs into his Swordfish, designated L4A, his observer, Lieutenant Norman Blood Scarlet settles into the rear cockpit. The nickname Perrin Hooch and Blood would be comical if the mission weren't so deadly serious. Williamson's aircraft carries an 18-inch torpedo weighing 1,610 pounds, modified with special fins and nose pistols to function in Taranto's shallow harbor. Standard torpedoes would simply bury themselves in the mud. These weapons have been engineered for one purpose: to kill battleships in 40 feet of water. The concept of using aircraft to sink capital ships is not new, but it has never been proven in combat. Admirals on both sides of the war still believe that battleships are the ultimate naval weapon. The aircraft are mere nuisances, useful for reconnaissance but incapable of deciding major engagements. Tonight will shatter that delusion forever. The attack on Taranto will become the blueprint for every carrier strike that follows, including one that will occur 13 months later at a place called Pearl Harbor. At 8:40 p.m., the first wave of 12 Swordfish lumbers off Illustrious's flight deck. The aircraft are so slow, so ungainly, that they seem to hang in the air rather than fly. Their engines produce a distinctive sound, a deep, rhythmic thrum that sailors call the stringbag's song. In the moonlight, they look like ghosts from the First World War, impossibly fragile, their fabric wings rippling in the slipstream. Each aircraft carries either a torpedo or bombs and flares. The flare droppers will illuminate the harbor. The torpedo bombers will go in low 50 feet above the water ends, release their weapons at point-blank range. There will be no second chance. There will be no going around for another pass. Each pilot gets one opportunity to hit his target or die trying. The flight to Taranto takes 90 minutes. The pilots fly in loose formation, navigating by dead reckoning and the stars. There is no radar guidance, no electronic navigation aids. They are betting their lives on compass headings, stopwatches, and Lieutenant Commander Williamson's calculations. As they approach the Italian coast, they climb to 8,000 feet, above the range of light anti-aircraft fire, but well within reach of the heavy guns. Below them, the Italian coastline is visible in the moonlight, a dark mass against the shimmering Ionian Sea. Taranto's harbor lies ahead, its entrance marked by a distinctive breakwater in the silhouettes of warships at anchor. At 10:58 p.m., the first flares ignite over Taranto. Brilliant white magnesium light floods the harbor, transforming night into day. The effect is instantaneous and catastrophic for the Italians. Every ship, every gun position, every barrage, balloon cable becomes visible. And then all hell breaks loose. The Italian gunners open fire. Traces arc across the sky in streams of red, orange, and white. Heavy flak bursts create black clouds that bloom and fade like deadly flowers. The noise is apocalyptic, a continuous roar of explosions and the screaming of aircraft engines pushed to their limits. Williamson pushes his Swordfish into a steep dive. The biplane's fabric wings howl in protest as he drops from 8,000 feet to 50 feet in a matter of seconds. His target is the battleship Conte di Cavour, 23,000 tons of steel bristling with guns. The battleship's secondary armament opens fire. Shells burst around Williamson's aircraft. Tracers flash past his cockpit so close he can feel their heat. At 300 yards, still diving, still accelerating, he levels off. The Swordfish is now flying straight at the battleship at a height of 50 feet. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and he will fly straight into Conte di Cavour's hull. At 200 yards, Williamson pulls the torpedo release. The 1,610-pound weapon drops, hits the water, and begins its run. The torpedo's wake is a silver line in the moonbright harbor. Williamson banks hard, climbing, desperate for altitude and distance. Behind him, his observer watches the torpedo track toward the battleship. 13 seconds. The torpedo maintains its depth. 12 seconds. It does not porpoise or dive into the mud. 11 seconds. The Italians aboard Conte di Cavour see it coming but can do nothing. Their ship is at anchor, immobile. 10 seconds. 987. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The explosion is enormous. A column of water rises alongside Conte di Cavour's hull, climbing higher than her superstructure, perhaps 200 feet into the air. When it collapses, the battleship is already listing. Williamson's torpedo has torn a hole in her hull below the waterline the size of a bus. The Ionian Sea pours into her compartments. Conte di Cavour will sink in shallow water, her decks awash, her guns useless. She will never sail again. The first blow has been struck, but the night is far from over. Lieutenant Neil Kemp goes in next, targeting the new battleship Littorio, the pride of the Italian fleet. Littorio is the most modern battleship in Taranto, completed less than a year ago, armed with Nini 15-inch guns and protected by torpedo nets. Kemp dives through a storm of anti-aircraft fire. His Swordfish is hit multiple times. Fabric, tears, control cables snap, but Kemp holds his course. At 150 yards, he releases his torpedo. It runs through, passes under the torpedo net, which doesn't extend deep enough. Fan strikes Littorio's hull. Another massive explosion. Littorio shudders from bow to stern. But she is a new ship, with modern damage control. She does not sink immediately. Kemp pulls up his aircraft trailing smoke, fabric streaming from his wings. He will barely make it back to Illustrious. More Swordfish attack. Lieutenant Mikhail Torrens-Spence, a 24-year-old pilot with movie star looks and nerves of steel, comes in so low that his wheels actually touch the water. His torpedo hits Littorio again. A second massive hole appears in her hull. Now she begins to settle. Torrens-Spence climbs away, his engine sputtering, his fuel tanks punctured. He will ditch at sea and be rescued hours later. Hypothermic but alive. The heavy cruiser Trento takes a bomb hit. The destroyer Libeccio is struck by another. The seaplane base erupts in flames as incendiary bombs ignite fuel stores and aircraft. The entire harbor is now a vision of hellfires reflecting off the water. Explosions, ships sinking, men drowning, and still the Swordfish keep coming. The second wave, launched an hour after the first, arrives to find Taranto already burning. They press home their attacks anyway. Lieutenant John Wellham puts a torpedo into the battleship. She sinks in shallow water, her superstructure remaining above the surface, but her fighting capability destroyed. By midnight, it is over. The Swordfish withdraw, their job complete. Of the 21 aircraft that attacked, only 2 are lost. 4 men are dead or captured. Behind them, 3 Italian battleships lie on the bottom of their own harbor. The balance of naval power in the Mediterranean has shifted in a single night. The Italian Navy, which had numerical superiority over the British Mediterranean fleet, is now crippled. It will never again threaten British control of the central Mediterranean. Malta will survive. Egypt will hold The entire course of the war in North Africa and the Mediterranean has been altered by 21 obsolete biplanes. The statistics are staggering. The British have achieved in one night what would have required a major fleet action costing thousands of lives and dozens of ships. The cost effectiveness is unprecedented in naval history. 2 aircraft and 4 men have destroyed or disabled half of Italy's battleship strength. The material damage is catastrophic. Conte di Cavour will never sail again. Littorio will be out of action for 6 months, and Chio di Uaia will require 5 months of repairs. The psychological damage is even greater. The myth of the battleship's invincibility is shattered. Admirals worldwide begin to realize that the aircraft carrier, not the battleship, is now the capital ship of naval warfare. In Tokyo, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto studies the reports from Toronto with intense interest. He is planning a similar attack on the American Pacific Fleet at a place called Pearl Harbor. The British have provided a perfect blueprint. Like Taranto, Pearl Harbor is a shallow anchorage. Like Taranto, it is defended by anti-aircraft guns and believed to be secure. Like Taranto, it contains battleships at anchor, immobile, and vulnerable. Yamamoto will improve on the British plan using more aircraft, multi-carriers, and better torpedoes. But the concept striking capital ships in harbor with carrier-based aircraft comes directly from Toronto. The Americans, ironically, ignore the lesson. Despite having observers in the Mediterranean, despite receiving detailed reports of the attack, American naval commanders convince themselves that Pearl Harbor is different, that it cannot happen to them. They are wrong. On December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft will execute a near-perfect copy of the Taranto attack. 8 American battleships will be sunk or damaged. Over 2,000 Americans will die. The Pacific War will begin with a disaster that could have been prevented if American admirals had paid attention to what happened in an Italian harbor 13 months earlier. But let us return to Taranto, to the morning of November 12, 1940. Dawn reveals the full extent of the carnage. Conte di Cavour lies on her side, her guns pointing uselessly at the sky. Littorio and Chio di Uaia sit on the bottom. Only their superstructure is visible above water. Oil slicks cover the harbor. Debris floats everywhere, wreckage, life rafts, personal belongings. Italian sailors work frantically to rescue their trapped comrades, to salvage what can be saved, to comprehend what has happened. Admiral Campion walks along the waterfront, staring at his ruined fleet, unable to believe that fabric biplanes could have done this. In London, Winston Churchill receives the news with undisguised glee. The glorious action at Taranto, Highwall right, altered the whole strategic position in the Mediterranean. He is absolutely correct. The Italian Navy will spend the rest of the war hiding in port, unwilling to risk its remaining battleships against British carrier strikes. The British Mediterranean Fleet, commanded by Admiral Andrew Cunningham, will dominate the sea lanes. Malta, the unsinkable aircraft carrier in the middle of the Mediterranean, will survive endless siege and bombardment. Supplies will reach Egypt. Ramos Africa Corps will starve for fuel and ammunition, all because of one night, 21 biplanes, and a group of young men with more courage than sense. The secret weapon that crippled entire enemy fleets was not a miracle of technology. It was not a super weapon developed in some secret laboratory. It was an obsolete biplane called the ferry Swordfish, affectionately known to its crews as the string bag. The Swordfish was slow, ungainly, fabric-covered, and already outdated when the war began. But it had one quality that superseded all its deficiencies. It was a stable platform for delivering torpedoes and bombs with devastating accuracy, and in the hands of skilled, determined pilots. It became one of the most effective weapons of World War II. The Swordfish would go on to serve throughout the entire war. It would sink more enemy shipping than any other Allied aircraft. It would cripple the German battleship Bismarck, slowing her enough for British battleships to finish her off. It would hunt U-boats in the Atlantic, protect convoys in the Arctic, and support amphibious landings from North Africa to Normandy. The last Swordfish flight would occur in June 1945, making it one of the few aircraft to serve from the first day of the war to the last. Not bad for an obsolete biplane that was supposed to be retired before the war even started. The pilots who attacked Taranto became legends. Kenneth Williamson, shot down and captured during the raid, spent the rest of the war as a prisoner. He survived and returned to Britain in 1945. Mikhail Torrens Spence who ditched at sea and was rescued, went on to fly more combat missions and survive the war. Most of the Toronto raiders lived to see victory, though some would die in later actions. But all of them knew that they had participated in something historic, something that changed the fundamental nature of naval warfare. The lesson of Toronto echoes through history. It teaches us that technology alone does not determine victory. The Swordfish was inferior to its opponents in every measurable way: speed, range, armament, protection, but it was employed with intelligence, courage, and careful planning. The British understood their weapons' limitations and used them to their advantage. The Swordfish was slow, but that made it stable for torpedo drops. It was fabric covered, but that made it light and able to operate from smaller carriers. It was obsolete, but that meant Italian and German commanders underestimated it. Sometimes the most effective weapon is not the most advanced, but the one used most skillfully. Taranto also demonstrates the importance of imagination in warfare. The British conceived of an attack that seemed impossible, striking heavily defended battleships in a fortified harbor with a handful of outdated aircraft. Conventional wisdom said it couldn't be done. The Italians believed they were safe. The British proved them wrong through audacity, training, and meticulous planning. They thought beyond the conventional, beyond what was supposed to be possible, and achieved the impossible. That is the essence of military genius, seeing opportunities where others see only obstacles. Finally, Toronto reminds us of the human element in war. Those 21 Swordfish were flown by young men who knew they might not return. They flew into a storm of anti-aircraft fire, into a harbor blazing with light and death, and they held their course. They did not flinch. They did not turn back. They pressed home their attacks with a courage that defies rational explanation. Statistics and technology matter, but in the end, wars are decided by individuals willing to risk everything for a cause greater than themselves. The pilots of Toronto were such individuals. On a quiet morning in 1940, in a harbor on the Italian coast, the world changed. Battleships, which had ruled the seas for centuries, became vulnerable. Aircraft carriers became the new capital ships. Air power became the decisive factor in naval warfare. And a handful of obsolete biplanes demonstrated that courage, skill, and imagination can overcome any technological disadvantage. The secret weapon that crippled entire enemy fleets was not really a weapon at all. It was the human spirit, refined to its finest edge, wielded by young men who refused to accept defeat. If this story captured your imagination, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We bring you the most incredible, untold stories of World War II every week. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments, which secret operation should we cover next? Your support means everything to us. Until next time, remember, history's greatest moments often come from the most unexpected places.